So, thank you for this opportunity to meet today and discuss this most glorious Srimad Bhagavatam, the ripened fruit of all Vedic knowledge. So, today we'll discuss, with the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas, from Canto 7 of Srimad Bhagavatam. I thought, given that we are approaching Nrsimha Chaturdasi, that we could discuss the pastimes of Lord Nrsimhadev and begin to prepare for this most wonderful celebration that will be taking place in a few weeks. So have some nice discussions on different topics related to the appearance of Lord Nrsimhadev. So today we'll discuss from Canto 7, Chapter 5, verse number 41. If anyone would like to get that verse up, we can read it together. So again, Canto 7, Chapter 5, verse number 41 is what we'll be discussing today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritta, Narayanam Namaskritta, Naram Chaiva Narottamam, Devim Saraswatim Vyasam, Tato Jayamudiriye, Nasta Prayeshu Vabhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavati Yatama Shloke, Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna. So once again, thank you for this opportunity and beg the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis so that we may have a nice discussion today on this most glorious Srimad Bhagavatam, the ripened fruit of all Vedic knowledge, the Mahapurana, and our Savior in all regards. So this title of the chapter is Prahlad, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu. So just read the verse and then do the word-for-word translation, read the translation and purport. So the verse number 41 reads as Pare Brahmani Anidirshe Bhagavati Akilatmani Yukatmani Apalasan Upanyasyeva Satkriya. Pare, in the Supreme, Brahmani, absolute, Anirdishya, who is not perceivable by the senses, Bhagavati, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Akhila Atmani, the super soul of everyone, Yukta Atmani, on he whose mind was engaged, Prahlad, Aphala, without effect, Asan, were, Apunyasya, of a person who has no assets in pious activities. Eva, like Satkriya, good activities, like the performer of sacrifices or austerities. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Even though a person has no assets in pious activities, performs some good deed, it will have no result. Thus the weapons of the demons had no tangible effect on Prahlad Maharaj, because he was a devotee, undisturbed by material conditions, and fully engaged in meditating upon and serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unchangeable, who cannot be realized by material senses, and who is the soul of the entire universe. Purport. Prahlad Maharaj was constantly and fully engaged in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As it is said, Govinda Parirambitaha. Prahlad Maharaj engaged himself always in meditation, and thus he was protected by Govinda, just as a small child in the lap of his father or mother is fully protected. A devotee in all conditions is protected by the Supreme Lord. Does this mean that when Prahlad Maharaj was attacked by the demons, the Rakshasas, Govinda, was also attacked by the demons? This is not possible. There have been many attempts by the demons to hurt or kill the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he cannot be injured by any material means, because he is always in transcendence. Therefore, the words Pare Brahmani are used here. The demons, the Rakshasas, can neither see nor touch the Supreme Lord, although they may superficially think that they are striking the Lord's transcendental body with their material weapons. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described in this verse as anirdishya. We cannot understand him to be in a particular place, for he is all-pervasive. Moreover, he is akilatma, the active principle of everything, even material weapons. Those who cannot understand the position of the Lord are unfortunate. They may think that they can kill the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotee, but all their attempts will be futile. The Lord knows how to deal with them. I love that last line of the purport. The Lord knows how to deal with them. And as we'll see, the Lord will deal with them. Okay? Om Jnana Timidantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tarati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paridana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaham Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Go Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. So we'll just reread the verse again. Even though a person has no assets in pious activities, performs some good deed, it will have no result. Thus the weapons of the demons had no tangible effects on Prahlad Maharaj, because he was a devotee, undisturbed by material conditions, and fully engaged in meditating upon and serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unchangeable, and who cannot be realized by material senses, and who is the soul of the entire universe. So just a little bit of context for this verse. Many of us are quite familiar with the pastime of Lord Nrsingadev and Prahlad Maharaj and Hiranyakashipu, but nonetheless it's always very nice to hear these pastimes over and over and over again. Actually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he would hear Srimad Bhagavatam from the lotus mouth of Sri Gadadhar Pandit at the Tota Gopinath temple, they would recite Srimad Bhagavatam daily. And Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur explains that they would read two pastimes over and over again. And those two pastimes were the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj and the pastimes of Prahlad Maharaj. And each time they would hear, they would swim deeper and deeper into an ocean of ecstasy. This repetition only brings about new and deeper realizations. And this is the beauty of Krishna consciousness. We can never really get to the bottom of it. And so these pastimes are very, very enlightening for us. And there are many, many lessons in the pastimes of Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad Maharaj. We see, the dangers of lust and the difficulties of controlling one's anger. We see the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in all regards. We see complete knowledge by hearing from Narada Muni. We see, how early one should take to the process of Krishna consciousness. And so many different lessons. They're innumerable. So the one that I thought we could discuss today is described in this verse, which is how Prahlad Maharaj remained fearless. What was the source of his fearlessness? And how we can apply that to ourselves in our daily lives. Because one who is fearless can make great progress in whatever they want. But if one is fearless in their spiritual life, one can remain undeterred regardless of material circumstance for success in the goal of awakening Krishna Prema. So this fearlessness will be the main topic of our discussion today. Now, again, just a little bit of review. So Hiranyakashipu is on a mission to avenge the death of his brother Hiranyaksh. And Lord Vishnu has killed Hiranyaksh in his appearance as Varaha in the boar incarnation. And so Hiranyakashipu is looking to avenge that killing. And while on the one hand he pacified his nephews and sister-in-laws with great knowledge and his own mother, he also took to the process of undergoing intense penance and austerity for the purpose of obtaining attempted immortality. So while he had knowledge, he had good shastric information about spirit, soul, and body, he is going to misapply that, or we can say not utilize it in the right way. And so obtaining this great power from Lord Brahma, he enacts and unleashes a reign of terror like never seen before. He had taken over the three levels of the material universe. He had usurped Lord Indra's palace and was sitting in his throne and just completely enacting a reign of terror. And everybody out of fear was worshipping Hiranyakashipu except for Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu. Even the great sages out of fear were worshipping Hiranyakashipu, and it's described very elaborately how intense his terror was, that even the fields were producing crops without even being plowed. Mother Earth was yielding crops without even being cultivated. The rivers were flowing gems and jewels out of fear of repercussions for not giving to Hiranyakashipu. And so he had everyone under his control, in absolute control. Well, almost everyone. He had 4 sons, and his most famous son is one of our 12 Mahajans, the great devotee Prahlad Maharaj. So while everyone was under his control, Prahlad Maharaj was not. Prahlad Maharaj was fixed in his process of devotional service. And so Hiranyakashipu, being a loving father, attempted to train his child in what he thought was best. And what he thought was best was following his demonic ways. And so he sent his child to Gurukul to be taught by Sandanamarka. And they were attempting to teach him all the demonic ways, how to cheat, how to use political power for your advantage, how to live a life of sense gratification. And so one day, Prahlad Maharaj was asked by his father, while sitting on the lap of Hiranyakashipu, "My dear son, what is it that you've learned that you've enjoyed most? What have you liked the most?" And Prahlad Maharaj very interestingly replies, and this is earlier in the chapter, he replies, and in replying, he doesn't say, "Oh, my father." He says that, "Oh, best of the asuras, O king of the demons." So he is calling his father, the "O king of the demons." And of course, the demons are very, happy to be received this way and to be, honored in that way. But Prahlad Maharaj says, "Oh, best of the asuras." And when Prahlad Maharaj speaks, he tells them that, it is very embarrassing to have come into this human form of life in the material world and having fallen into a dark well where there is no water but only suffering. This is verse number 5. I'm just paraphrasing. And he says, one should go to Vrindavan and worship Krishna. So now this is, of course, the enemy of Hiranyakashipu. And so his son speaking this way was quite unsettling. And he was sent back to Sandanamarka to be retaught and to be protected from this, what Hiranyakashipu thought was, bad knowledge. And after some time, Prahlad Maharaj was brought back to his father, dressed very nicely, and Hiranyakashipu is, very lovingly and, with tears in his eyes, receiving his son, and very anxious to hear now how his newly trained up son has understood, the real purpose of life, at least what he understood. And so he asks again, "What have you learned?" And Prahlad Maharaj very famously replies, the 9 processes of devotional service: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyamatma, Nivedanam. And explaining these pure processes of devotional service. And you can imagine the fury that Hiranyakashipu had. And hearing this again, thinking, wow, my attempts are failed. And then, Hiranyakashipu begins to ask Prahlad Maharaj directly, where are you getting this knowledge? Why are you this? And Prahlad Maharaj begins to preach to his father. And that becomes very unsettling for Hiranyakashipu. And Hiranyakashipu, finally seeing no other means, Prahlad Maharaj says, don't be a blind man following another blind person into the ditch by these material attachments. And like this, speaking very strongly. And so Hiranyakashipu decided to kill his son. And now we can think, wow, how one can become so enraged and enlivened that he could not tolerate. Everybody was under his control. But one 5-year-old boy was doing some devotional service off to his own, keeping to himself. Yet Hiranyakashipu could not control that, and that led to ultimately to his destruction. And this gives us some instruction that, the uncontrolled senses will never be satisfied, and they ultimately and always, unequivocally, lead to our ruination. So Hiranyakashipu, he rationalizes his activities, and he gives, what seemingly great philosophy. He says it's okay to kill a son if a son is destructive to the family, just as much as it's okay to take in another member into the family if they are very supportive. And then he says, sometimes a doctor has to amputate an arm to save the whole body, to save this dynasty of Rakshasas. I must, kill my son. And so his own rationalization satisfied himself, and thus he instructed his servants to try to kill Prahlad Maharaj. And they tried so many elaborate ways, and they were, in the prior verse, they began striking the tender parts of Prahlad Maharaj's body with their tridents, and sharp teeth, and we know that they sent wild mad elephants and threw him in a blazing fire. They tried to freeze him to death, throw him from a cliff into a pit of serpents, and so many different ways they tried to kill Prahlad Maharaj. But what was Prahlad Maharaj's reaction to all of this? Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Shmaranam. He was unmoved, undeterred. He had no fear. He was completely fearless. And now, how is this possible? How is it that one can be completely fearless in the midst of such dangerous atrocities? We become fearful at the slightest, disturbance. There's a mouse in the house, we become fearful. We're on a plane and there's a little air pocket, fear. We hear a noise in our house at night, fear. We're adults and there is fear. But what about a child? A child is fearful by the littlest of things. And who is always comforting that child when they are in fear? Mother and father. But childs are so easily overcome by fear. And they're also very easily pacified because of their faith in their mother and father in their protection. So this fear exists. And, in today's circumstance, maybe there is some fear. Right? So how is it that Prahlad Maharaj, being thrown from a cliff, being put into the path of wild, trampling elephants, thrown into a pit of snakes, thrown into a blazing fire, how is it that he was fearless? So we'll discuss now the source of his fearlessness. And then we'll also discuss how is it that these tridents, these sharp tridents, could not even pierce the skin of a small, tender young child. Anyone who is the mother of a boy, at least for sure, knows one thing they go through rapid supply of are Band-Aids. Boys are always hurting themselves, cutting themselves, tripping here and that. There's always ample supply in any household of kids, particular boys. They have Band-Aids. So how is it that Prahlad Maharaj, this 5-year-old boy, his skin could not be pierced by this trident, nor could it be damaged by this fire, or anything? He was untouched. So we'll discuss that too. So 2 things. Prahlad Maharaj's fearlessness, and how he was untouched by all of these atrocities. So what is the source of Prahlad Maharaj's fearlessness? Well, in this verse, we hear that the weapons of the demons had no tangible effects on Prahlad Maharaj because he was a devotee undisturbed by material condition and fully engaged in meditating upon and serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prahlad Maharaj, he had no reason to fear in his mind because he had full faith in the promise of the Supreme Lord. When one is in Krishna consciousness, what is there to fear? Krishna is always promising and ensuring his protection. Now, if one has faith in that statement, then they are comforted. Why is a child so quickly pacified from a very, severe nightmare or a very dangerous fear that they may have when they come to their mother or father, as Prabhupada says, in the lap of a father. Why? Because they have full faith in the protection of mother and father. They have no doubt. They have complete understanding. And so, their fears are quickly dissipated. So Prahlad Maharaj, the source of his fearlessness was his faith in Krishna. His faith that Krishna is here. He will protect me. Prahlad Maharaj knew not even a blade of grass can sway in the wind without the control and sanction of Krishna. And Prahlad Maharaj knew that if Krishna wants to protect me, he will. And if he doesn't, he won't. And if Krishna wants to protect me, there is nothing that can harm me. Not even these tridents, not even these snakes, not even the fire or cold or the elephants. Nothing. So he had faith that Krishna's plan was perfect for him. If Krishna wanted to protect him, nothing could touch him. And if Krishna wanted him to change his bodies, no problem. Because he knew, I am not this body. I am spirit soul. A devotee, let's step back from a devotee. Fear is simply the fear of losing something that we value. Right? When we have the potential to lose something that we value, then there is fear. The very successful businessman is fearful of losing his wealth. The politician is fearful of losing his position. Right? The movie star is fearful of losing their fame or their beauty. Right? Because that is what they value. So when one is in material life, then one is guaranteed to be full of fear. Because everything material will ultimately lose. There is no escaping that concept. And in the 11th canto, I just wanted to read one verse. In the 11th canto, King Nimi is hearing about this aspect of fear from sage Kavi, one of the 9 yogendras. And this verse speaks directly about this aspect of fear. So I just wanted to read the verse real quick. Very beautiful. It says, fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself as the material body because of absorption in the external illusory energy of the Lord. When the living entity thus turns away from the Supreme Lord, he also forgets his own constitutional position as servant to the Lord. This bewildering, fearful condition is affected by the potency for illusion called Maya. Therefore, an intelligent person should engage unflinchingly in unalloyed devotional service of the Lord, under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, whom he should accept as his worshipable deity and the very life and soul. So this fear arises when one identifies with the body. And why is that the case? And why is there no fear when one has fixed in unalloyed pure devotion? Well, the pure devotee knows that his only or her only valuable asset or possession is their bhakti, their relationship with Krishna. And Krishna says that whatever one does in devotional service, there is no loss or diminution. It is eternal. It is eternal. So Prahlad Maharaj knows that, hey, if I'm going to, change bodies here, no big deal. As long as I can maintain my Vishnu Shmaranam, my Krishna consciousness. Because this body is not so valuable to me. This, birthright is not so valuable to me. But what is valuable is my opportunity to serve Krishna. So thus the devotee has no fear, because that which they value is eternal. There's no scope for it to be lost. And thus, no matter what the material circumstances, one can remain very calm, poised, and collected. And that position now is achieved when one has faith. Faith in these statements. Right? Because Krishna gives us in Bhagavad Gita, in Srimad Bhagavatam, in his pastimes, and in his activities, assurance over and over and over again that he is protecting us. You know? He says that the devotees are under my protection. He says, my devotee never perishes. He says, I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. He says, I am the swift deliverer. He says, do not fear. Masuchaha. So he's constantly reminding us, my dear child, I am here for you. So Prahlad Maharaj, in the midst of such, scary and difficult things, he had no fear. Why? Because he had great faith. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktaram Yagnatapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Surdam Sarva Bhutanam Nyaktam Mam Shantim Vichati. Shantim, one finds peace when one knows three things. Bhoktaram Yagnatapasam. Krishna is the enjoyer. If one stops trying to enjoy this material world for one's own sense gratification, identifying with the body, then there is peace, as we heard from this verse from the 11th canto. As soon as one misidentifies with the material body, there is fear. Why do we misidentify with the material body? Because we forget who is the real enjoyer. But the real enjoyer is Krishna. Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. Krishna is the source of everything. If he is the source of everything, he is the ultimate authority, the ultimate controller, then what greater shelter we could have? One becomes very peaceful knowing, once I have Krishna in my heart, nothing else I need. He is the ultimate and the absolute. And then the final statement Krishna makes to give us comfort. He speaks theoretically, not theoretically, but technically, he is the only enjoyer. Hey, I am the absolute. But then he speaks with love and says, Surdam Sarva Bhutanam. I am your ever well-wisher. That mother or father who is trying to protect child, what is their ability to protect? In the eyes of the child, it is unlimited. And thus they have no fear. But is the mother and father's ability to protect unlimited? No. Because we know, even the will and love of mother and father can be overcome by some other force. But when Krishna says, Surdam Sarva Bhutanam, can his will ever be overcome? Never. It can never be overcome. Because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nothing can overpower his will. So if one has faith that, wait a minute, one may, as they grow up, their mother and father don't become the same source of comfort, right? Why is that? When we grow up, we get into adulthood, we don't look to mother and father at the same level of comfort as we did as a young child. Why? Because now we have knowledge of they're fallible as well. They're still a source of great love, but that fear exists. But the devotee knows that, okay, beyond mother and father exists our Supreme Father, Krishna, and he can protect us. And so Prahlad Maharaj, he had full faith in this statement. There was no scope for him to be fearful. Because Krishna's statements are unequivocal. He is our ever well-wisher. When Krishna says he is our ever well-wisher, there's one conclusion that we should draw. Now, brace yourself, because it's not always easy to digest, but it's a fact. If Krishna is the supreme controller, nothing can happen without his sanction, and he is our ever well-wisher, then there is one logical conclusion. Everything that happens to us is good for us. Why Krishna would give us anything that is bad for us if we are attempting to awaken our relationship and become his eternal servant? He says, as soon as one surrenders to me, as soon as one becomes my devotee, I take control of their process. So if Krishna is controlling our process and he is all loving, then it means whatever we may perceive to be bad for us is also good for us. Maybe not good for our material condition, but certainly good for our bhakti, for our devotion. So the devotee has great faith that, wait a minute, whatever is happening, if I perceive it good or bad, it is for my benefit. And the devotee, during the times of difficulty, searches out, okay, what is this instruction for me? How can I advance my love for Krishna through this perceived difficulty? Because Krishna must be giving it to me for my benefit. Because he is Surdam Sarva Bhutanam. He is my ever well-wisher. So Prahlad Maharaj, in the midst of this difficulty, had no concerns, no fears. He was fully settled. And you can see his settled nature because he was unflinching in his Vishnu Smaranam. As long as he could remember the Lord, there was no reason for him to be worried about those snakes. And how Krishna protected his consciousness when the snakes were coming, what was he thinking? Oh, the servant of my master, Anantashesh. When he was thrown into the fire, he said, does somebody have a sweater? It's feeling a little cold in here. He was feeling cool in the midst of fire. When the elephants were trampling, it was like, oh, nice massage. Nothing was affecting him. And why? Because Krishna was protecting him. So faith led to Prahlad Maharaj's fearlessness. And why Prahlad Maharaj was untouched? Because as Srila Prabhupada says, they may think they can kill the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotee, but all their attempts will be futile. So not only is it faith that Krishna in theory will protect, but Krishna is actually always protecting his devotees. And so when the tridents came, nothing could touch him because Krishna was protecting him. And we have so many examples of this. When Srila Haridas Thakur was being beaten in the 22 marketplaces, why he was not dying? He was fully chanting the holy names of the Lord, but he was not feeling any pain. Now, we say, wait a minute, how did he get protected? Krishna let him go to 22 marketplaces. Why he didn't stop it after the first marketplace? Well, because while he was being beaten, when Krishna saw this, he immediately called, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately called for his Sudarshan Chakra, as he did when Jagai and Madai attacked Lord Nityananda. But Sudarshan Chakra would not go and attack those who were beating Haridas Thakur. Why? Because Haridas Thakur was pleading to Krishna, please forgive these people who are beating me. And Sudarshan Chakra knew, while my master's word, the Supreme Lord, is supreme, I know my master surrenders to the desire of his devotees. So better I listen to his devotee who is saying, protect. So Krishna had called Sudarshan Chakra to go, but it would not go because Haridas Thakur was praying for the forgiveness and deliverance of those who were beating him. So what did Krishna do? Say, I tried. I did my best. Haridas Thakur said no. Okay, no. And as we all know, that we later learned during the Mahaprakash Lila, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself went and onto the back of Haridas Thakur and accepted every single one of those lashings. Undeterred, his protection for his devotee was absolute. Ambarish Maharaj, when Durvasa Muni invoked the fiery demon, immediately Sudarshan Chakra came. Ambarish Maharaj didn't even resist, didn't even put up his fists. He's a king, ready to protect. But he didn't even. And Sudarshan Chakra came. Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada crossing the ocean was experiencing from our external vision great difficulty. 2 heart attacks. The captain was very worried that he was going to die on this ship. That he could not take another day of the rampant seas. And that night, Srila Prabhupada had a very sweet dream. This is all in the Jaladuta diary, if anybody has had a chance to read it. It's so sweet. It's a tearjerker. He had a dream that the Dasa avatars had come and they were personally rowing the boat across the Atlantic. But it wasn't a dream. It was actually happening. Krishna came to protect Srila Prabhupada. So much so that the captain had commented that he had been crossing the oceans for decades. And he had never, ever seen the Atlantic like that. It was like a sheet of ice, completely flat, allowing the boat to ply through the waters without any disruption. Who was protecting? It's Krishna. So we see example after example that Krishna is always protecting his devotees. It is a fact. But he is not protecting the bodies, the material assets, the material wealth, fame, beauty, intelligence. What is he protecting? Their bhakti. And so when we pray to Lord Nrsimhadev for protection, we are praying for protection on the path of devotional service. We pray to him that let our bhakti remain fixed with us. Because whatever else I have is of no value. And thus I don't have any fear of losing that. My material possessions, I'm going to lose them anyways. But what I do want to protect is my spiritual life. So when one has knowledge of what is really to value, free from this material conception, then there is no fear. And when one has strong faith in the statement of Krishna, in the protection of the Supreme Father, the love of the Supreme Father, then there is no fear, regardless of how extraordinary the material circumstance may be. And Prahlad Maharaj, being one of the 12 Mahajans, the teachers to us of spiritual life, shows us this by his example. He was unmoved as a 5-year-old child, based on his fixed position in pure devotional service. So from a practical standpoint now, we'll just conclude. What to do when we become fearful? What should we do? What is the process? Take more to the process of devotional service. When we become fearful, remind ourselves. Fear originates from the bodily conception. Go back to 11th canto, 2nd chapter, 37th verse. It arises only when the living entity misidentifies himself with the material body. Okay, wait a minute. I'm spirit soul. Krishna is here. No need to be fearful. Just as the mother speaks some wise and loving words to the child to ease their fears, we can use our knowledge from Shastra to speak to ourselves and dissipate our fear. Because we're not going to be perfect. We may not be at the level, actually speaking for myself, of this fixed determination and purity. Okay, so when the fear comes, draw back to these pastimes and remind yourself, oh, nothing to fear. And carry forward. And increase our devotional service. Because it is only the means of our success. So that is what we can do. While we may not become able, may not be able to be at the position of Prahlad Maharaj, we can learn from his example and increase our devotional service in those times of fear. Increase our chanting, our reading, our worship of the Supreme Lord, our association with the devotees, honoring prasadam. And in that way, we can come to the position of Prahlad Maharaj with full faith in the words of the Lord, and let us not ever forget, Krishna is our ever well-wisher, and always there protecting us, absolutely, unequivocally. And his will can never be overcome. So we have put our faith in protection in the absolute and ultimate protector. Hare Krishna. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Any discussion, comments, questions, corrections, clarifications? Can you have? Okay. There are no comments or questions. We will adjourn for today. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.